Welcome back. In this session, we'll be looking at the ordinary school of thought. In the first lecture, we look at the cardinal school of thought under this topic. In this topic, we are looking at the theory of consumer behavior. That is, you want to see why more of a commodity is demanded as the price falls and vice versa. And I have said that we have two main schools of thought, the cardinal school of thought and the ordinary school of thought. We look at the cardinal school of thought the other time when we look at marginal utility and the rest. Uh, Today we'll be looking at the ordinary school of thought. Uh, in mathematics, when we refer to ordinal numbers, we are referring to positions, relative positions in a sequence. So let's say you have items placed in some order, and you tag one as first, second, third, fourth. That kind of ordering is what we are referring to as ordinal numbers. The ordinary school holds a view that utility is not measurable. That is, when we consume commodities, we cannot quantify the satisfaction we derive from them. Rather, we can rank the satisfaction we derive from the, the bundle of goods we consume. For instance, if you have three pieces of banana against two pieces, we can say that three pieces is preferred to two pieces. So two fingers of banana is less preferable to three fingers of banana. So we can say that the individual prefers three to two. So in terms of ranking, the individual will rank the 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 bundle that has three fingers of banana higher than the one that has two fingers of banana. So the other school is saying that we can't directly measure the utility we derive from commodity, but we can rank the utility that we derive from the bundle of commodities we consume by saying that this one is first, second, third, and fourth in that order. So under this approach, we'll be making use of indifference curve and budget line in doing our analysis. Indifference curve and budget line. An indifference curve is just a graph that shows the combination of two commodities that give the same level of utility. You'll see an example of it as you move on. So let's take this graph. We have U1, U2, U3, U4. These graphs, U1, U2, U3, U4, are called the indifference curves, and they represent a given level of utility. For instance, U4 gives, if you are consuming on if you are consuming a bundle of commodities on U4, the satisfaction you get is higher than consuming a bundle of commodities on U3. The same with U2 and U1. Take for instance uh, U4. When you have 8 units of banana and 5 units of banana, you will realize that that bundle is higher than U3 that has 6 bundles of banana and 5 units of groundnut. So you can see that the U4 bundle is preferable. That is 8 and 5 is preferable to 6 and 5. So the same, if you take U2, the bundle 5 units of groundnut and 4 units of groundnut is lower than that of U3, which is 6 units of banana and 5 units of groundnut. The same with U1. So you can see that when you are consuming at U1, the utility you derive is lower than the utility you derive when you are at U2. And if you are at U3 too, it's higher than that of U2. And if you are at U4, it's also higher than that of U3. And every consumer would like to consume bundles along the U4 because that will give the consumer the highest level of satisfaction. So the further we move away from 0 to the right, that is along the y is equal to x axis. As you move to the right, you realize that the utility below is lower than the utility you derive as you move to the right. So these utility functions represent the desire of the consumer. The desire of the consumer. Every consumer would like to be on U4 because given U1, U2, U3, U4, every consumer would like to be on the U4 because among these alternatives, that is sought to give the consumer the highest level of satisfaction when he's consuming these two commodities, banana and groundnut. So on a given indifference curve, let's say U4, the consumer can have different bundles of banana and groundnut, and he will derive the same satisfaction from consuming those various bundles as long as he remains on the U4 curve. So you can see that as you move from the top to the down, you'll be reducing the quantum of banana consumed and be increasing the quantity of groundnut consumed. So there's some kind of substitution there. So as you want more groundnut, you have to sacrifice more banana. So once you remain on the same indifference curve, you can consume different bundles and derive the same level of utility. But when you move from one indifference curve to the other, the level of utility is no longer the same. So as you move from U4 to U3, the level of utility will reduce. So that is the indifference curve. Then another tool we'll be using is the budget constraint. As I've said earlier, anytime we go to the market to buy commodities, it is our wish to have everything for ourselves. But the reality of life is that we can't have everything for ourselves because we are limited by the income we have in our pockets and the prices of the commodities we are buying. So that is what we are calling the budget constraint. So the budget constraint is just telling us that given the market prices of goods and the income in our pocket, we can only buy as much as we have. That is limited to the income we have in our pocket. So the consumer may want to have everything for himself, but he's constrained by his income and the prices of the goods on the market. So we can represent this budget uh, constraint by the equation y is equal to price of banana times the quantity of banana plus price of groundnut times the quantity of groundnut. So if your income is y and you take the price of banana, you can buy some quantity of banana. You take the price of groundnut, you can buy some quantity of groundnut. So that the expenditure on banana and groundnut when added together will be equal to your total income. So this is the income of the consumer. And so the y side is the income and the right the right hand side is the expenditure. So the consumer's income is equal to its expenditure. Over here, we are assuming that all the income the consumer has is spent. There is nothing like savings or borrowing. So the consumer spends everything he earns. So what we are essentially trying to do over here is that a consumer has an income Y, and his wish is to consume two commodities, banana and groundnut. So the consumer wants to maximize his utility from consuming a bundle of banana and groundnuts, given his income level. So we can draw his income given market prices of goods and the quantity of groundnut and banana the consumer would like to buy. If you look at this graph here, we have banana on the y-axis and groundnut on the x-axis. We can from this budget constraint y is equal to PB, price of banana times banana plus price of groundnut times groundnut. We can make banana be the subject. That is, we express B in terms of Y and the prices and the groundnuts. When we do that, we have the expression B is equal to Y over PB minus PG over PB times G. And this is a linear equation of the form Y is equal to A plus BX, the usual linear equation we know in mathematics. Since this is a linear equation, we can easily plot it on a graph. You can see from the equation that the slope is negative. The slope of the line is minus PG over PB. That is the slope of the line. So we can draw the slope this way. We can draw the budget line this way. It is easier to draw this. It's a matter of assuming that if G is equal to 0, that is if the consumer doesn't consume any groundnut at all, then the amount of banana the consumer will get, that is if you put G into the equation on the second line, if you put G is 0, then B will be equal to Y over PB. So on the banana axis we have Y over PB. You can do the same. If the consumer spend all his income on groundnuts and no banana, then the B will be 0. If you solve for G, you have Y over PG, as we can have at the x-intercept here. So this is the budget line of the consumer. We can see point A and point D on this graph. Point A is within the consumer's budget. If the consumer is spending at point A, what it means is that he's not spending all his income on banana and groundnut. He's making some savings. He's spending within his budget. our focus is not to look at points within the budget constraint. Our focus is to look at points on the budget line where the consumer is spending all that he earns. So at point A, the consumer is not spending all his money. He has some savings there. At point B, the consumer cannot reach point D. The consumer cannot spend, they cannot buy the quantity of banana and granite at point D because his income cannot afford that particular bundle. So the consumer can either afford the bundles on the budget line or within. He cannot afford anything above because market prices and income will not allow him to do that. But when his income increases, the budget line will shift to the right. When his income decreases, the budget line will shift to the left. When the price of the commodities change, the budget line will rotate. For instance, if the price of groundnut should fall, the graph will be static at the y-intercept, but it will stretch to the right on the x-intercept. So the point y over pg will move to the right. So the line will rotate with a fixed point at y over pb. The same applies there. If the price also increase, it will become steeper. That it will move to the left. The same way if the price of banana, if the price of banana changes, the graph will either rotate up or down depending on the direction of change. For instance, if the price should increase, price of banana should increase, the slope will fall. The slope on the y-intercept will move downwards, and the curve will become flatter. At point y over pb, that is on the x-intercept, that the groundnut intercept, that place will be fixed. But if the two prices are changing at the same time, then the intercepts will also change. The two intercepts will also change at the same time. But if one price is changing at the time, it's only one of the intercepts that will move. So if income changes, let's say income increases to the right, income increases, the slope will shift in a parallel way to the right. If there is a fall in income, the slope, the line, the budget line will shift to the left in a parallel manner. But when the prices change one at a time, the slopes will become steeper or flatter, depending on what is changing. So we'll quickly look at the consumer's equilibrium situation. This diagram is telling us that the consumer has a budget constraint that will allow him to buy commodities on the straight line from the banana axis to the granite axis, the straight line that means at point A. That is what the consumer can afford. Either the consumer can afford all that is on that line or below. But here we are saying that the consumer spends all his income. So the consumer should be able to spend only on that line, meaning the consumer can buy different combinations of groundnut and banana so that his income is exhausted. Now, so that is the income of the consumer. That is what the consumer can afford. Now, as a consumer, when you go to the market, your wish is to get the highest possible satisfaction. But the reality is that you are constrained by your income. So the consumer would like to be at point C, but it's not possible because his income cannot take him to point C. At point B, the consumer can do better because at point B, he will not be spending all his money. Meanwhile, the consumer's aim is to maximize utility. So When he's at B, he will not be maximizing utility. But when the consumer is at point A, he will be maximizing his utility because that is the best he can do given his level of income. So when we are at point A, we say the consumer is maximizing utility. He is getting the highest utility given the limitations placed on him by his income level and the market prices of banana and groundnuts. What we seek to do over here is to disturb this initial equilibrium and see how the quantity demanded of the commodity concerned will adjust so that the consumer maintains his equilibrium situation. So, so the point A is the initial equilibrium situation of the consumer, where the consumer is maximizing utility subject to a given constraint. Uh, mathematically, this is a constraint optimization problem that the consumer is facing. So that is what we all always face. In economics, we want the best, but we are limited by our resources. So the issue is how do we maximize the our satisfaction given the limited resources we have. So this is a constraint optimization problem. Those of you who have studied calculus, or if you can remember the calculus you studied, you might have studied something like constraint optimization. That is, you optimize a function subject to a given constraint. So that is what we are looking at graphically here. So we will assume that the price of groundnuts has fallen. So when the price of groundnuts has fallen, we, ex- we expect the budget line, which is the line that the budget line, which is point y over pb on the banana axis, and y over pg on the groundnut axis. That line is the initial budget line. Now, when the price of groundnut falls, you can see when the PG becomes smaller, this whole expression y over PG becomes bigger. So it will shift from y over PG to y over PG prime, which has extended the to the right side of the groundnut axis. So this happens when the price of groundnut falls. If the price of groundnut were to increase, this graph will rather shift to the left instead of shifting to the right. So it will rotate to the right. So in this case, the graph is rotating to the right. And as you can see on the banana axis, the point is still static there because the price of banana is not changing. It's only the price of groundnut that is changing. So as the price of groundnut falls, we expect the curve to shift, to rotate to the right, to the point y over pg prime, as you can see over there. Now, as the price falls, because the indifference curves are everywhere dense in this space, the consumer will still achieve some equilibrium. And the new equilibrium the consumer will achieve will be at point C, where the y over the line y over pb, the line segment y over pb, and y over pg complement intersects utility curve 3. So the indifference curve 3 at point C is our new equilibrium when the price of groundnut falls. Now we have So as the price of groundnut falls, it has moved the consumer from lower level of utility, which is at point A, to a higher level of utility, which is at point C. So we move from a lower level of utility, which is U2, to a higher level of utility, which is U3. As we are saying that in this case we can rank utility. So if somebody is at U3, he's enjoying higher utility than somebody who is at U2, because the bundles that will be consumed at U3 will all be higher than the bundles that will be consumed on U2. And the consumer prefers more to less. Every consumer wants more to less. So when the price of groundnut falls, the quantity of groundnuts consumed will increase from G0 to G1. That is what is being shown here. When the price is at the initial level P0, the quantity of groundnut consumed is G0. G0. And when the equilibrium is at A. But when the price falls to P1, the quantity of groundnuts consumed increase from G0 to G1. That is what we are seeing here. So you can see that the lower the price, the higher the quantity consumed. Anytime the price of a commodity changes, it makes the commodity, it gives the consumer some kind of real income. For instance, if the price of a commodity falls, that if the consumer were to buy the same old quantity, you see that he will be able to make some savings. And that savings can allow the consumer to buy more of that commodity. Now, the consumer is able to buy more of the commodity because he has been able to make some savings as a result of the fall in the price of the commodity. That is what allows the consumer to increase his consumption from G0 to G1 of groundnuts. Now, the movement from G0 to G1 is the total effect of the price change on groundnut. That is the amount by which groundnut consumption changes as a result of the change in the price of the commodity. Now, this effect, which we call the total effect of the price change, can be broken into two effects: the income effect and the substitution effect. Let me explain these two concepts separately. First of all, substitution effect is a situation where, as a result of the change in the price of the commodity, the consumer sees that commodity to be cheaper or more expensive, and for that matter, substitute one for another. In our case here, when the price of groundnut falls, it makes groundnut cheaper compared to banana. So what happens is that the consumer will reduce his consumption of banana in order to buy more groundnut. That situation is what we call the substitution effect. So when the price of a commodity falls, that commodity becomes cheaper in the eye of the consumer. So the consumer will always substitute the cheaper one for the more expensive. So the more expensive one will be reduced. The quantum of the more expensive commodity, the relatively more expensive one will be reduced, while the relatively cheaper one, the consumption will increase. That's what we call the substitution effect. And this happens when the price of the commodity changes. The reverse will happen if the price of the commodity goes high. If the commodity becomes more expensive, less of it will be bought, and the consumer will shift his resources to buying the other commodity, more of the other commodity. So The substitution effect occur when you are on the same indifference curve. So the movement from point A, so the total effect is the movement from point A to point C. But we are saying that this total effect of the price change on groundnut consumption can be broken into two: the substitution effect and the income effect. The substitution effect always happens when you are on the same indifference curve. So how are we moving from point A to point B? That is the issue we have to resolve. Now, if you look at the new budget line as a result of the price change, which is y over pb and the y over pg prime, which intersects the indifference curve 3 at point C. When you want to take, you see, when the price of the commodity falls and the consumer is buying the same quantity of the commodity, he has some kind of savings. So if you take that saving away from the consumer, how will he behave? Assuming that that saving is not available to the consumer as a result of the fall in the price of the commodity. What will happen is that if you take that savings away from the consumer, the saving that is resulting from the fall in the price of groundnut, if you take it away from the consumer, it will shift the budget line to the left from y over pb y over pg prime to tt. It will shift the budget line to the left because we are taking that savings away. So there will be a parallel shift of the budget line downwards. But the shift must be done in such a way that it is still tangent to the initial indifference curve, which is U2. Because on U2, the consumer will still be getting the same utility, because U2 is a combination of different units of groundnut and banana that give the consumer the same level of utility. So we want to maintain the same level of utility of the consumer. So what we do is to shift this curve, this budget line down to TT, while at the same time touching the budget line at a point. And the point where it touches the budget line, the point where the budget line, the new budget line, touches the old indifference curve is point B. We call the new indifference curve TT a compensated budget line. We call it a compensated budget line. So you can see that when the consumer moves from point A to point B, he is reducing the quantity of banana which he perceives to be more expensive, and substituting it for the commodity that he sees to be cheaper, which is groundnut. So the consumer is reducing the consumption of banana while increasing the consumption of what? Groundnut. And the movement from point A to point B is what we call the substitution effect of a price change. As I said earlier, the total effect of a price change, which is the difference between point G1 and point G1 and G0. That is when the price of groundnut change, that is the total effect it has on the quantity of groundnut consumed. So this quantity can be decomposed into two: the income effect and the substitution effect. And the way we derive the change in consumption as a result of the price change due to substitution effect is to move from point A to point B. And as I said, we do this by shifting the new budget line that intersects at C, utility 3 at point C, shift it to the budget line TT to intersect the old utility or the indifference curve at point B. And moving from point A to point B give us the substitution effect of the total effect. Now, after getting the substitution effect, we have to get the income effect of the price change. When the price changes, the consumer has some savings, and that savings allow the consumer to buy more, and that is the income effect of the price change. Now, we can show the income effect when we move from one budget line to another budget line. So we move from the budget line TT to the new budget line Y over PB and Y over PG prime. That intersect at C. That intersect the indifference curve U3 at C. So when we move from one indifference, when we move from one budget line to another, then we are talking about income effect, because as your income increases, you are in a position to buy more of the commodity. So we can show this income effect by moving from one equilibrium point to another equilibrium point, and when the budget lines are parallel to each other. So in that case, the income effect is the point from B to C. So the total change as a result, the total change in groundnut consumption as a result of the change in the price of groundnut is G1 G naught, that distance. And the substitution effect of it, the substitution effect part of that total effect is the movement from point A to point B. And then moving from point B to point C is the income effect. The income effect, we are moving from one indifference, we are moving from one budget line to another budget line. At point B, there is an equilibrium there because the compensated budget line touches the old indifference curve U2. So when you move the budget line parallel to a higher level of utility, the change in consumption there is as a result of the change in income. So that is the income effect. So when we add the substitution effect and the income effect, we will then arrive at the total effect of the price change. So when the price of a commodity changes, it produces two effects, the income effect and the substitution effect. And the substitution effect occurs by moving on the same indifference curve. So we are moving on indifference curve 2. So we are moving from point A to point B, and that whole area, that movement, the quantum of the change there represents the substitution effect. And the movement from point B to point C represents the substitution effect of a price change. So in effect, every time the price of a commodity changes, it produces two effects: the income effect and the price and the substitution effect. The income effect and the substitution effect. The sum of these effects, the income effect, and the substitution effect, is what we call the total effect of a price change. So anytime there is a change in price of a commodity, in this case, from P0 to P1, the groundnut consumption changes from G0 to G1. It has increased, and this increase in groundnut from G0 to G1 is due to two effects: the substitution effect and the income effect. And as I explained earlier, the substitution effect is saying that the groundnut compared to banana becomes cheaper because its price has fallen. So the consumer is going to buy more groundnut and less of banana. He will remain on the same indifference curve because his utility will be the same, just that he will rearrange his expenditure. Then moving from point B to C constitutes the income effect. I will urge you to go to the textbooks and read adequately this concept of income effect and saturation effect and how the graphs are drawn. They are not too difficult to understand, but you need to practice it before you can understand the concept. And this budget line drawing is also a very simple issue. It's just like taking any linear function. If you take y is equal to b plus a plus b m or bx, and you want to plot y as a function of x, it's easy to do that. So the budget line is also follows the same logic. I think with this we should be coming to the end of the topic on theory of consumer behavior. Thank you and see you at another time.